Okay, everybody. I hope you have a cup of coffee to enjoy with me. I'm enjoying mine. It's a pleasure to be with you again. Coffee with Carlson, and today we're going to talk about this hopeful story surrounding RSV. Um, the story I'm going to go into, and I hope that I don't bore anybody, but to me it's a fascinating story because RSV is a disease that has been around. RSV, excuse me, RSV stands for Respiratory Syncytial Virus, and we know that this virus has affected almost the entire world population for centuries, and it is a significant illness that affects mainly those who are under 5 years old and greater than 65 years of age. By the time we get to be age 5, almost everybody has had the infection. And this graph represents how many infections we see in those under 5, represented by the orange bar. And then the hashed orange portion of the bar represents those under 6 months old. So the younger you are, the more vulnerable you are to be hospitalized with this disease. And then if you're greater than 65 years of age, you will notice that the hospitalizations there represent about 300,000 annually here in the United States. And then you look on the right side of the graph and you see the number of deaths. And so every year we see almost 60,000 children die from RSV, which is a real tragedy when you think about it. And in those who are older than 65, everybody on our coffee with Carlson this morning, there is 15,000 deaths. And that too is a significant number. And this disease is one that typically starts with a cold, upper respiratory symptoms, and then for those that are severely affected, it goes down into the bronchi and then ultimately into the lungs. And that can be, of course, devastating. And pneumonia and tracheobronchiolitis are the two major causes of the hospitalization and death, both in the very young and in the very old. For decades, we've been trying to develop a vaccine. Back in the 50s and 60s, the success that we had with smallpox and polio vaccine made the researchers think at that time, well, we can apply this to RSV and we should be able to get the same results. And unfortunately, that was not the case. And during a particularly devastating trial in the mid 60s, they inoculated about 80,000 infants with RSV vaccine. And it did the exact opposite of what we were trying to achieve, meaning those infants ended up in the hospital at a much greater rate. Approximately half of those 80,000 babies, about 40,000 babies, ended up hospitalized because of respiratory disease. And what we learned is that it was a vaccine enhanced respiratory disease. And the vaccine development then continued, but from the mid 60s until the mid 2010s, 2013 in particular, there was really no advance in developing an RSV vaccine because of what happened with that trial in the mid 60s. And I should tell you that there were a couple of deaths in that trial in 1965, and that, of course, was just devastating to the trial and to the overall picture around RSV vaccines. Next, back in 2013, this guy entered the picture. He was at that time working in Bethesda, Maryland, and Dr. McClellan identified a protein called the F protein, and he figured out the shape of this protein of the RSV virus. And that then gave new energy and new hope to the RSV vaccine endeavors. And then fast forward to 2020 and the coronavirus, this same approach that he used with the F protein and stabilization of the F protein, he applied it to the spike protein for coronavirus. And then in 2020, the vaccines were developed using this approach that Dr. McClellan developed along with Dr. Wang. And I should mention that these gentlemen are at the University of Texas, Austin. And then in 2021, they received a patent for the pre-fusion coronavirus spike proteins. And that has become the core of not only the coronavirus vaccine, but importantly for our discussion this morning, for the RSV vaccines. And I'm going to just share with you a schematic here. The over here on the left, this is the native F protein in the virus membrane in an RSV virus, respiratory syncytial virus. And as it fuses with a cell, then it is able to infect the cell. And what Dr. McClellan and his colleagues did is they produced these little peptides that could fuse with the protein and prevent it from infecting the cell. So this inhibited the ability for the F protein of a respiratory syncytial virus from infecting human cells, and that then led to the vaccines. And now we are seeing multiple vaccines developed by the likes of GSK, Pfizer, Moderna, and Bavarian Nordic, which are in different phases of clinical development. Over the last 7-8 years, there are 8 different vaccine candidates that are now in clinical phase or clinical development, drug development. And I believe 8 of these candidates are in either phase 2 or 3, 4 of which are in phase 3. And as we learned a couple of weeks ago, that is the next step towards FDA approval. And so, with a little bit of hard work over the next year or two, we anticipate that the FDA will approve not one, but perhaps multiple RSV vaccines, which will hopefully then rapidly lead to reduced hospitalizations and the reduced deaths, not only in the very young, but in the elder population as well. And so the RSV vaccine story is one that helps everybody understand the complexity around vaccine development and how the advances, the molecular biology advances, the advances that Dr. McClellan and his team have made in protein development, protein structure, and then subsequently with vaccine development is all part of this story that we need to be optimistic about and is leading us to better and better treatments and preventions. And in my opinion, this RSV vaccine story is a great one, and we're going to be hearing more and more about it in the coming years. And it will be one more brick on the pile of medical advances that 20th and 21st century medicine needs to be proud of.
And Dr. Carlson, we have, speaking of being proud of, as Texans, we can be proud of Dr. McClellan being at the University of Texas, right, Austin,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
he
Yes.
was named what 2021 Inventor of the Year, Texas Inventor of the Year.
Yes, because and the primary reason for that is because that patent that he has on the technology for modifying these proteins in a virus to prevent them from infecting cells, human cells, that technology is being utilized by every COVID-19 vaccine, whether it's Moderna, Johnson and Johnson, Pfizer, or Novavax. All of them are using his technology, his patented technology, in order to develop the COVID-19 vaccine. And the same technology is being used in the development of the RSV vaccine as well.
And I think we have a question. Is Dr. Wang's first name Vincent?
Um, I know Dr. McClellan's colleague that helped develop this technology is Dr. Wang. I apologize. I don't know his first name for certain.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if we Google the Texas Inventor of the Year, I'm sure Dr. Wang and Dr. McClellan will be notified or will come up at the top of the search.
And he's a young guy, or he looks young, so he's done a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
impressive work in his short career.
yeah, absolutely.
Anybody have any questions about the RSV virus and or the story?
Just curious, and maybe you covered it. Any projection on when it would actually be ready for patient use in our office?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned before, these different candidate vaccines are in different phases of clinical trial. There are 4 of them right now that are in phase 3, and we anticipate by the end of 2022 that several of those phase 3 trials will have been completed, which is the step necessary to then take the candidate vaccine to the FDA and get FDA approval. The FDA approval process can take anywhere from many months to multiple years, but given the advances, given the progress that has been made over the last 8 years, I am predicting that by sometime in 2023 we will likely have an RSV vaccine in the market. I've been wrong about those kind of predictions before, but given the rapidity of advances recently, I think that's a reasonable guesstimate of when we might have a vaccine that would be available to young people and elders.
Did you include Be Well clinical studies in that number of, or what phase will we be?
Yeah, so Bewell Clinical Studies is participating in the phase 3 clinical trial that Bavarian Nordic has developed, and that phase 3 clinical trial will be opening in the Greater Austin area in April of this year.
And Dr. Carlson, we're talking about a preventative vaccine, not treatment, correct?
Correct. And that is an important concept. This vaccine would not treat RSV pneumonia, for instance, but it will help prevent the individual from ever getting RSV pneumonia. And based upon what has happened over the last decade, there is a monoclonal antibody that has been developed and is available for treating immunocompromised individuals who do develop RSV pneumonia, severe disease. But that is typically reserved only for those that are very sick and very immunocompromised. So it's a relatively uncommon drug that is used in today's world.
So what other means are being used to treat RSV now?
And like so many viruses, we really don't have great treatment. In medicine, we call it supportive care, meaning we can use things like IV fluids, oxygen, good nursing care, but there's no therapies like an antiviral medicine or an antibiotic medicine that treats RSV disease once you get it. So unfortunately, like many viruses, we do not have those therapeutics that are available to us once you have the disease.
I have another question just from your knowledge. You know, there's an expression, out of bad sometimes comes good. Do you think the pandemic served or will serve as an impetus now for more vaccines to be developed? Are we going to see a lot of this on the horizon now?
Oh, I believe without a doubt, and in fact, this RSV vaccine advancement that we're seeing right now is partly due to the pandemic, because Dr. McClellan's team and other teams have benefited from the work on COVID-19. And there was a Nature article that was published in December, and it points to that fact that the work on mRNA vaccines like the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, though that work on mRNA vaccines is pushing forward the field of vaccine development dramatically. And so, yes, all of the urgency associated with the pandemic is allowing us to reap benefits in other fields like RSV. And in the broader world of protein structure, proteomics, and how we apply this knowledge to other diseases is absolutely a real phenomenon that's happening right now.
And that Nature article that Dr. Carlson mentioned is in there's a link to it in the RSV blog that Dr. Carlson wrote on our website. So if you go to stayhealthystayhome.com, which is the bewellmd website, and you go to the blog section, the RSV blog that he wrote, we put a link to that really great Nature article. So it's very interesting. It talks a lot about McClellan and all the great work that he's done.